Hi there, guys, and welcome to another edition of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Just finishing up the NFC South free agency reviews with this video with the New Orleans Saints. So last season, another 7-9 finish for the Saints, no doubt disappointing. Drew Brees approaching the end of his career at this point. I'm sure they want to try and at least make a run at the Super Bowl whilst he remains a Saint. The issue there being, once he's gone, this team could be a real disaster. That offense has been carrying this team for years. Once again, last year, one of the best teams in the league in the passing game. Brees prolific once again. Good variety of weapons. Spreads the ball around. That scheme, him and Peyton, they're going to score points. They know what they're doing. Run game was pretty good. Brought back Jari Evans. He performed well. Offensively, hard to complain about them too much. Once again, very effective. Defensively, start of the season, they improved as the season went on. I got to give them credit, but the first half of the year they were an absolute mess. They were approaching levels of, where I'm starting to look at them as one of the worst defenses I've ever seen. That's competing with a couple of the Saints defenders over the previous couple of years. Frankly, the way that offense performs, they should be in the playoffs every year, and it's 3 years in a row they've missed out in spite of getting great production from the offense, and that's because this defense has just been a mess. The linebacker position has been an issue for a while now. They've got Cam Jordan on the D line, he's great. Nick Fairley performed quite well. In the defensive backfield, that Delvin Breaux, he looks like he's been a good find. They found a corner there. Von Bell was a rookie last year. He should only improve. Vaccaro's been a disappointment. Jairus Byrd was an absolute bust. So that a lot of work to do there. But going into next season, it is same old story in New Orleans. Can they fix the defense? If so, this team could be geared up for a playoff run. So just looking at my needs for the Saints going into this off season, I had, as you might expect, they're all on defense. Cornerback, they got Delvin Breaux. They don't have much else. That's reasonable, I think. And both inside and outside linebacker spots, they do not generate nearly enough pressure. They've had that fella from the Hawaiian fella, Healahu Kikaha, so missed all of last season. They got Stephon Anthony. James Laurinaitis should not be a starter at this point in his career, an absolute liability at this point in pass coverage. He was never the most athletic player. As he's got older, that started to go. I don't know what it is with the Saints. Donnell Ellerbe, they like signing experienced linebackers, but they get them when it's too late. The guys are past their prime and they just can't cover and run, especially in the modern NFL where your linebackers have to be. It's hard to. You maybe have one guy who might be a bit of a liability and try and scheme around it, but when you've got two or three guys in the front seven who are liabilities, you're just going to be torn to bits. So that's still a huge need. Could do with. I really feel like they're going to go in with Vaccaro and Bell, but Vaccaro, I think he'd be better off in one of them sort of hybrid linebacker safety roles. He gets lost in coverage. I wouldn't trust him at all back there in that regard. So, interesting times. In terms of losses, they haven't actually had anyone leave. They've got two guys that are on the market. Jairus Byrd, of course, coming off a monster contract that he initially signed in free agency 3 years ago now, I believe. Disaster, didn't really ever work out there. And Sterling Moore, who I think is a pretty good option, played pretty well in Tampa the previous year, was okay last year. Solid slot receiver if you're after one. You wouldn't want to pay him too much. He's not a top player or anything. As I said previously, that market is pretty deep. So we'll see what happens with those. In terms of the signings they've made, for me this has been a mixed bag. So we'll start with the positives. Ted Ginn, 3 years, $11 million. I quite like this signing. Of course, there was the big Brandon Cooks trade. Ginn will step into that role as the sort of designated deep threat wide receiver. The way the Saints offense is, they like to have lots of different pieces that fulfill different roles for them. So you've got Michael Thomas, who had a great rookie season as, you know, the big-bodied Marcus Colston-esque player, can get the jump balls, the 50-50 balls, probably more talented than Colston was, and Colston had a great career. Willie Sneed, possession guy, makes tough catches. I mean, some of the acrobatic catches that guy makes really go unnoticed. He's made some amazing catches over the last couple of seasons, and he really came out of nowhere. He's a good player, and Ging gives them the deep threat. I don't particularly rate their tight end position. That's something that they could look to improve, but it's a good group. So he steps into the void left by Brandon Cooks. 3 years, $11 million. That's pretty reasonable. Just got to try and replicate what he did in Carolina. I'm not sure, beyond that, he's been around the league a little bit. That's the only real success he ever had. Obviously washed out in Miami, was in San Fran, didn't really achieve anything in his time there. But I think, he knows his role at this point in his career. I think the Saints will get the most out of him, and I think it's a pretty good contract for the role that they're going to be putting him in that offense. The other great signing, Larry Warford. Actually, I wouldn't say great. It's a good signing, the game one. Not great. This one is great. Getting Larry Warford in, so he's going to just step in, I would expect, and replace Jari Evans on what has been a really good offensive line for a number of years. It's one of the reasons that offense just keeps humming along. Drew Brees has had great stability at that position. It's been a long time now that the Saints have kept that line together and intact. Warford was a very, very good player for the Lions, I think. Great run blocker, okay in pass protection, had some injury issues, really the only problem they've had, but it's a good contract as well. The Saints have overpaid a lot in the last few years, but 4 years, 34 mil, 17 guaranteed, perfectly reasonable. You're getting a good starter at guard. He'll be there for the next few years. Payton's come out and said before, interior pressure is a bigger issue because of the nature of their offense, which I understand. They are the quintessential quick pass team for the most part. 3-step, 5-step drops and the ball's out instantly. So good signing. They've clearly wanted to be more of a run-heavy team in the last few years. This definitely helps them in that regard. Great signing. The only other two moves that they've made, one of them I've moaned about on a previous video. Nick Fairley, 4 years, $30 million. Now, I did mention earlier he's done well. Did well last season for the Saints. One of the few bright spots on that defense. But there's a reason he's been, bouncing around on these 1 year contracts. We saw in his time in Detroit. When he's motivated and he is healthy, he is a very, very good player. But you cannot trust him. He is the sort of player that is a risk to turn up, to training camp at 350, 360 pounds and totally out of shape. 4 years, $30 million is a lot of money. They have, I understand you want to reward him for a good season on a prove-it deal, but I wouldn't have minded where 2 years at big money with an easy get out after 1 year. I don't know, maybe they front loaded it in some kind of way where they can do that, but I don't trust him. I don't think the Saints should have put this level of trust in him. This could easily bite them, don't be wrong. It could go, if he plays like he did last year for the duration of this contract, it's a great deal at pretty good value. I just don't think it's going to happen. And the other signing, keeping up the tradition of signing mediocre linebackers who can't cover, AJ Klein has been signed from the Panthers, 3 years, $15 million. I expect he'll probably start, but there was they've got a very good linebacking crew in Carolina, one of the top ones in the league over the last few years. But this is just another backup quality player that they're bringing in, hoping he can start and sort of kickstart what has been a weakness. I don't expect to have an impact. It's another guy that's going to struggle in coverage, and it will keep up with the narrative that has been the case in New Orleans for the last few years. I think. That's all their signings. Sort of summarise, I don't really feel like they've gone anywhere. It's like everything they do on offense seems to work and go right, and they make smart decisions. And then defensively, it is the total opposite. And this fits that narrative to me. Still got needs all over the defence. The offense looks, they've done a fine job there. They've got 2 first-round picks now, so you expect them to be spent on defence. It's a good defensive draft, apparently. So I expect to see them go get a defensive back in the first round, a corner, Most likely, I expect they'll probably go for a front 7 player, possibly a D lineman. I think Reuben Foster would be a great addition. If he's there for them, they should definitely make that happen. The offense will be fine. Maybe get some guys for depth, but I don't think they need to address that side of the ball particularly, unless they're after a successor for Drew Brees, which may not be a bad idea. Maybe that's what they'll be looking at doing with that 32nd overall pick they acquired from the Patriots. I don't think Brandon Cooks will be missed massively. He's a good player and young. He could only get better, but I understand why they've done it. He's not going to be a focal point of that offense, which he complained about last year. I think the 2 other receivers they've got, I think they're both better players than Brandon Cooks. If you disagree, let me know. But I would take either one of those 2 guys, Michael Thomas or Willie Snead, over Brandon Cooks for my team. Unless you're looking exclusively for a deep threat, in which case, Cooks wins out. But I think he's a bit unreliable other than that. So I think that was a good trade. I think it benefits both sides. I think the Saints need the draft pick more than they need another receiver and an offense that's still fine. So they get the thumbs up for that. But as I say, everything they seem to do on offense, it tends to work out, and I seem to approve of it. So we'll see what happens there. Going into next season, needs still the same. I think they could do with a more dynamic running back to be added to the team. Ingram is he's the Alex Smith of running backs. I'm going to do an episode on this. My Alex Smith, being the middle ground. Him and Andy Dalton kind of like the bar for mediocrity at quarterback. I'm going to do an episode where I cover that position, at each position, the guy who represents perfectly fine, inoffensive player. I think that would be a good episode. I'll have fun coming up with names for it. I've got a lot of names in mind, believe you me. But thank you very much for checking out this video. As always, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Feel free to drop me some comments. What do you think of what the Saints have done? What would you do to address the defensive woes that they've had? Clearly they need some additions. How do you think they should have attacked free agency? Do you think the Fairley deal was reasonable? What do you think of the Brandon Cooks trade? Obviously, it's kind of a big deal. You don't see too many trades like this too often. So let me know about that. Who do you think they should get to replace Drew Brees? I'll try and get back to everyone on these. Suggest an idea for an episode that I'll do my best to get it done. And follow me on, check out the Patreon, follow me on Twitter, all that good stuff. Check out the Facebook page. Thank you very much for listening. Please check out the rest of the shows. I hope you enjoy those too. Pleasure as always. Have a good one and go Bucks.